I was sitting in the doctor's waiting room when my phone rang. It was my only daughter, Angela. Her voice sounded strange, almost cold as she said, "Mom, we're going on a trip to Europe tomorrow. I already sold your beach house and your car. We needed the money. Bye." And she hung up just like that. 45 years raising her, sacrificing for her, and she discarded me like garbage. But I took a deep breath and smiled, because there was something my dear daughter didn't know. My name is Antonia Brooks. I'm 71 years old, and until that moment I thought I knew my daughter. I had become a widow 6 months ago. My husband, Robert, had passed away from a heart attack while we were eating breakfast, just as we had done every morning for 45 years. That morning he had served me coffee with cream and toast. As always, he had kissed my forehead and said, "Good morning, my love." Those were his last words. Since then, Angela had been more present in my life, or so I believed. She came to visit 3 times a week. She helped me with the funeral arrangements and accompanied me to the grocery store. She even suggested I see a doctor for a general checkup. "Mom, you need to take better care of yourself now that you're alone," she'd say with that smile I thought was love. But now I understood it was for convenience. The beach house had been our sanctuary for years. Robert and I bought it when Angela was 15 with a lot of hard work and sacrifice. Every summer we'd go there building memories, celebrating birthdays and Christmases. Angela would bring her boyfriends and later her husband, Edward. I would cook for everyone, clean and do the laundry. It was our family tradition. I never thought she'd see it as just money. And the car, that old Ford pickup truck, Robert cared for like his own child. He'd wash it every Sunday, change the oil religiously, and always park it in the same spot under the shade of the tree. Angela knew what that truck meant to me. It was the last thing I had left of him. His scent still lingered on the seats. When she hung up, I stayed there on that uncomfortable green plastic chair, surrounded by other sick people. And for the first time in months I didn't cry. Something strange happened inside me. A calm I hadn't felt since Robert's death. Because in that moment, I remembered something I had completely forgotten. 3 days before he died, Robert had handed me a manila envelope. "Antonia, put this in the drawer of your dresser. If something happens to me, open it after a while, but only when you feel ready." I had put it away without much thought. After the funeral, with so much grief and so many arrangements, I simply forgot. But there it was waiting for me at home. The nurse called me to go into the office. The doctor examined me and said I was in good health for my age, that I just needed to rest more and eat better. I nodded and smiled, but my mind was elsewhere. I was thinking about that envelope, about the coldness in Angela's voice, and how Edward was probably behind all of it. He had never liked me. He always saw me as a nuisance. I left the office and walked slowly to the bus stop. I no longer had a car, according to Angela. But as I waited, I couldn't help but smile. There was something poetic about all of this. My daughter thought she had left me with nothing. But what she didn't know was that Robert, my dear Robert, had always been a man who planned ahead. The bus arrived and I sat by the window. I watched the city go by. The houses, the stores, people rushing everywhere. All with their own tragedies, their own secrets. I had my own too. And I was about to discover them. When I got home, I went straight to my room. I opened the dresser drawer, and there was the manila envelope, exactly where I had left it. My hands trembled slightly as I picked it up. I could feel there were several documents inside. Robert had written my name on the front in his neat handwriting. I sat on the bed we had shared for so many years and took a deep breath. It was starting to get dark outside, and the house was filling with those familiar shadows that no longer scared me. I opened the envelope slowly, as if unwrapping a birthday gift. What I found inside would change everything. What I found in that envelope took my breath away. There were legal documents, deeds, bank certificates, and a handwritten letter from Robert. My eyes filled with tears as I read his familiar handwriting. "My dear Antonia, if you are reading this, it means I am no longer with you. Forgive me for not telling you everything while I was alive, but I wanted to protect you from worries. Over the years, I invested our savings in properties and businesses. We don't just have the beach house. We have 6 other properties. including the apartment building where Angela and Edward live. We also have shares in 3 companies that are worth more than you can imagine. You are rich, my love. You always were rich, but now you are on paper too. My hands trembled as I looked through the documents. There were deeds to houses in different city neighborhoods, a downtown condo, a small motel on the coast, and indeed the 20-story apartment building where my daughter lived. Robert had been the silent owner for the past 10 years, but had put everything in the name of a company I didn't know about. And according to the papers, I was the sole heir of that company. There were also bank statements for accounts I never knew existed with numbers that seemed unreal. Robert had been a bus driver for 40 years, but apparently he had also been a very smart investor. Every penny we saved, every sacrifice we made, he had multiplied in silence, and I never knew anything. In the letter, Robert explained that he had kept it all a secret, because he didn't want me to worry about money, or for Angela to know about our real financial situation. You know our daughter Antonia. If she knew we had so much money, her attitude would change. I want her to love us for who we are, not what we have. What irony! Our daughter had left us thinking we had nothing when in reality we had everything. That night I couldn't sleep. I walked around the house, touching the old furniture and the knickknacks Angela had always criticized for being outdated. I looked at the family photos on the wall, especially the one where she was 5 years old, sitting on Robert's lap and laughing. Where did that sweet little girl go? When did she become so cold, so calculating? The next day, early in the morning, the phone rang. It was Angela again. Her voice sounded different, softer, but I had already learned to be wary of those shifts in tone. Mom, how are you? I wanted to tell you we already transferred the money from the house and the car. We deposited your share into your account. It's not much, but it'll help you live for a few months while you look for something smaller. My share? I asked, keeping my voice calm. Yes, Mom. We obviously weren't going to leave you with nothing. We gave you 30%. That's fair, right? We need the money for our investment in Europe. Edward has an incredible business opportunity over there. 30% of my own things. How generous. I see. Honey, and when do you leave? This afternoon. Our bags are already packed. We'll be gone for at least 6 months. Maybe more if the business goes well. But don't worry, Mom. When we get back, we'll help you find a small apartment. Something that fits your needs. Fits my needs. As if she knew what my needs were. Okay, Angela, have a safe trip. Oh, Mom, I knew you'd understand. You've always been so compassionate. We love you so much. And she hung up. I stood there with the phone in my hand, and for the first time in months I laughed. I laughed like I hadn't since Robert died. The situation was so absurd. It was comical. My daughter had robbed me, kicked me out of my own house, talked to me with unbearable condescension, and all to fund a European adventure that would probably be a disaster. But what bothered me most wasn't the money. It was the ease with which she had discarded me. 45 years of my life dedicated to her, of sacrifice, of unconditional love, and she had erased me from her life with a 2-minute phone call. That was what truly hurt. I checked my bank account online. Sure enough, they had deposited an amount that probably seemed generous to them, but to me was a mockery. They had sold the beach house for much less than it was worth, likely because they needed the cash quickly, and they had sold Robert's truck for a pittance. That afternoon from my window, I watched Angela and Edward load their suitcases into a cab. He was carrying 2 huge suitcases. She had a very expensive-looking carry-on bag. I watched them laugh, kiss, and make plans. They looked like 2 teenagers excited for an adventure. They never looked toward my window, never said goodbye. When the cab drove away, I sat in the kitchen with a cup of tea and Robert's documents spread out on the table. I had to make some decisions. I could call a lawyer, reclaim my properties, and get back everything they had taken. But something told me there was a better way to handle this, a more educational way. I called Mr. Peterson, the lawyer who had handled Robert's affairs. He had been at the funeral, had given me his condolences, and had told me to call if I ever needed anything. Well, now I needed him. Mrs. Brooks, it's good to hear from you. How are you? I'm doing well, Mr. Peterson. I need to see you urgently. I found some documents from Robert that I don't quite understand. Of course, you can come to my office tomorrow morning. I'll be there. That night, for the first time in months, I slept soundly. I dreamed of Robert. He was sitting in his favorite chair reading the newspaper just like every morning. And when he saw me, he smiled and said, "It's about time, my love. It's about time you stood up for yourself." I woke up with a strange feeling. It wasn't exactly happiness, but it wasn't the sadness I had felt for so many months either. It was something like determination. For the first time since Robert's death, I had a clear purpose. I was going to get back what was mine, but not in the way Angela expected. The next morning, I got dressed with more care than usual. I put on my wine-colored dress, the one Robert always said made me look elegant. I fixed my hair and put on a little makeup. And when I looked in the mirror, I saw a woman I hadn't seen in a long time. I saw a strong woman. Mr. Peterson's office was downtown. It was an old but elegant building with marble floors and large windows. He greeted me with a warm smile, but when I showed him the documents, his expression changed completely. "Mrs. Brooks, this is much more than I imagined. Robert was a very smart man. Look, according to these papers, you are the owner of—" "I know, Mr. Peterson. I've already reviewed them. What I need to know is what I can do legally." Mr. Peterson explained that everything was in order, that the documents were legitimate, and that I was the rightful owner of all those properties. He also confirmed something I had already suspected. The sale of the beach house was illegal because Angela had no right to sell it. "We can get the house back immediately, Mrs. Brooks, and we can also proceed with legal action against your daughter for fraud." "No, Mr. Peterson. I don't want to proceed with legal action. I want to do this another way. I want everything to remain a secret for now. Can you help me?" He looked at me with curiosity, but he nodded. "Of course, you are my client. What do you need?" "I need you to discreetly get the beach house back, do what is necessary to nullify that fraudulent sale, and I need you to help me gain real control of all my properties, especially the building where my daughter lives." "I understand. It will be a process that takes a few weeks, but it's completely feasible." "Perfect. And Mr. Peterson, I need no one to know I am behind all of this, at least for now." When I left his office, I felt as if I had woken up from a very long dream. I walked through the downtown streets watching the people, the buildings, the life that was going on as normal. But for me, everything had changed. I had a plan. The following weeks were the strangest of my life. Officially, I was a poor widow who had been abandoned by her daughter. But in secret, I was a rich woman silently orchestrating the recovery of my assets. Mr. Peterson worked efficiently, and every few days, he would call me with updates on the progress of the legal proceedings. I decided to stay in my house for the time being. It was mine after all, although Angela probably expected me to move into a single room. Every morning I would wake up, have breakfast at the same table where Robert and I had shared so many years, and then go for a walk in the neighborhood. The neighbors would greet me with that mix of pity and curiosity they reserved for recent widows. Aurora, my lifelong neighbor, came up to me one afternoon while I was watering the plants in the front. "Antonia dear, is it true that Angela went to Europe and left you all alone?" "Yes, Aurora, she went with Edward. They have business plans over there." "And how are you going to live, sweetie? We all know Robert didn't leave much money." "If you only knew," I thought. "Don't worry, Aurora. I'll be fine. Do you need anything? I can bring you some food, help you with groceries." "You're very kind, but I'm fine, really." Aurora looked at me with that expression I knew well. It was the same look I had received after the funeral, compassion mixed with a little relief that it wasn't her tragedy. "Well, you know where to find me if you need anything." These conversations were constantly repeated. The butcher, the baker, the lady at the corner store. Everyone spoke to me with that soft tone they use with the unfortunate, and I would nod, smile, and thank them for their concern. But inside, a part of me enjoyed this performance. It was like living a double life. Mr. Peterson called me one Wednesday morning. "Mrs. Brooks, I have good news. I was able to nullify the sale of the beach house." The buyers didn't know the sale was fraudulent, so they got their money back without any problems. The house is yours again. Excellent, Mr. Peterson. And the building where Angela lives, that one is more complicated. Technically, you've always been the owner through the company, but we need to make some administrative changes so that you have direct control. That should take another 2 weeks. Perfect. Keep me informed. After hanging up, I sat in the kitchen with my coffee and thought about Angela. She had been in Europe for 3 weeks, and I hadn't heard anything from her. Not a call, not a message, not even a postcard. To her, I had ceased to exist the moment she got the money she needed, but I knew that was going to change soon. I decided to visit the beach house. I took the bus to the coast, the same route Robert and I had taken hundreds of times. The house was exactly as I remembered it. Small, painted cream-colored with a porch overlooking the ocean. The new owners had put some potted plants on the steps, but other than that, everything was the same. I sat on the curb across the street and looked at it for an hour. I remembered summer afternoons when Angela was little, running on the beach and building sandcastles. Robert grilling fish on the barbecue while I made salads in the kitchen. Angela bringing friends, then boyfriends, then Edward. All those happy moments that she had reduced to a simple commercial transaction. An older gentleman came out of the house and saw me sitting there. He approached me with curiosity. "Are you okay, ma'am?" "Yes, thank you. I'm just remembering. I knew the former owners." "Yes, I knew them very well. What a shame about what happened. They told us the elderly lady was very sick and needed to sell fast. We thought it was a steal, but it turns out the sale wasn't legal. We had to give the house back." "Did you know them personally?" "No. We did everything through intermediaries, but they told us the daughter was handling everything because the mother couldn't." What a sad situation. If you only knew how sad it really was, I thought. Well, I'm glad you didn't lose your money. Yes, luckily, everything worked out well, although now we have to look for another house. We like this one a lot. I left there with a heavy heart. It wasn't just the money that hurt. It was the ease with which Angela had lied about me. She had made up a story about my illness. She had used my supposed vulnerability to justify her actions. To her, I wasn't a person with feelings but an obstacle that had to be removed. That night, I called Mr. Peterson again. "Mr. Peterson, I need you to help me with something else. I want to get Robert's truck back too." "That will be more difficult, Mrs. Brooks. The truck was in your name, but your daughter had a power of attorney that allowed her to sell it." "How is that possible?" "Apparently, you signed that power of attorney a few months ago after your husband's death. Don't you remember?" There it was, the moment Angela had started planning all of this. I vaguely remembered signing some papers she had brought to me, telling me they were to facilitate the funeral and inheritance arrangements. I had been so confused by grief that I signed without reading. How naive I had been. "I understand, Mr. Peterson. Is there any way to get it back?" "We can try, but it will be more complicated. We would need to prove that you signed that power of attorney under deception or coercion." "Let's do it. I want to get back everything they took from me." Over the next few weeks, I developed a strange routine. In the mornings, I was the poor widow everyone knew. I would go out to buy necessities, talk to the neighbors, and keep up appearances. But in the afternoons, I became a businesswoman. I would study Robert's documents, talk to Mr. Peterson, and plan my next move. I learned things about finance I never thought I would need to know. I discovered that Robert had been much smarter than I thought. Every one of his investments had been carefully calculated. The building where Angela lived, for example, wasn't just profitable from rent. It was in an area that was rapidly appreciating. I also discovered that Edward, Angela's husband, had a lot of debt. He had taken out loans using the apartment they lived in as collateral, not knowing he wasn't the real owner. When the banks figured this out, he was going to be in serious trouble. Mr. Peterson called me one Friday with important news. "Mrs. Brooks, we've finished all the paperwork. You now have total control of all your properties." I also got Robert's truck back. The buyer turned out to be an acquaintance of mine, and when I explained the situation, He agreed to return it in exchange for a small compensation. Excellent work, Mr. Peterson. Now I need you to help me with one more thing. I want you to send a letter to my daughter. What kind of letter? An eviction notice. There was silence on the other end of the line. Mrs. Brooks, are you sure you want to do this? Completely sure. She decided I wasn't important in her life. Now she's going to find out how important I really am. I understand. Do you want me to send it to Europe? No. I want you to give it to her when she gets back. I have a feeling it's going to be very soon. I wasn't wrong. That same afternoon, Aurora came running to my house with fresh neighborhood news. Antonia, did you know that Edward is in trouble with the bank? My brother-in-law who works there told me they're investigating some loans he took out using the apartment they live in as collateral, but it turns out the apartment isn't his. Really? Yes. And it seems Angela didn't know anything. They're saying she's going to have to come back from Europe to sort out this mess. What a complicated situation. Yes, and the worst part is apparently Edward lied to her about the business in Europe. There was no business. He just wanted to escape the debts he had here. Perfect. Everything was working out exactly as I had expected. Angela had trusted Edward, had sacrificed her relationship with me for him, and now she was discovering that he wasn't the man she thought he was. That night I sat on the porch with a cup of tea and looked at the stars. Robert used to say that the stars were the souls of people who had lived a full life watching over their families from the sky. If that was true, then he was up there watching his plan unfold perfectly. Thank you, my love, I said to the sky. Thank you for taking care of me even after your death. The next day Mr. Peterson called me early. Mrs. Brooks, I have some news. Your daughter just arrived in the country. She's at the airport alone. Alone? Yes. Apparently Edward stayed in Europe. There are rumors they had a very big fight. I see. Did you send the letter? I'm going to send it today. She should receive it tomorrow. I hung up the phone and stood there in the kitchen, feeling a mix of nervousness and anticipation. After so many weeks of silent planning, the moment for the first real move had finally arrived. Angela was about to discover that her mother was not the defenseless victim she believed. Angela arrived at her apartment on Tuesday night. I knew this because Aurora, who seemed to have informants throughout the neighborhood, came to tell me the next day. Antonia, your daughter came back last night. I saw her go in with one suitcase, but she looked terrible pale, with dark circles under her eyes, as if she had been crying the whole flight. Alone, completely alone. And something strange, Antonia. When the doorman asked her for, I was in the waiting room at the doctor's office when my cell buzzed. It was my daughter Angela, my only child. Her voice sounded off, almost detached when she said, Mom, we're leaving for Europe tomorrow. I already took care of selling the beach house and your car. We needed the cash. Bye. And just like that, she disconnected the call. After 45 years of raising her, pouring everything I had into her, she tossed me aside like I was yesterday's trash. I took a steadying breath, though, and even managed a small smile because my darling daughter was missing a crucial piece of information. My name is Antonia Brooks, and I'm 71 years young. Up until that moment, I truly believed I knew my daughter. I had become a widow only 6 months prior. My beloved husband, Robert, had succumbed to a heart attack right at our breakfast table, just as we had sat every single morning for the last 45 years. That particular morning, he'd made me coffee with a splash of cream and toasted my bread. He'd given me his usual kiss on the forehead and said, "Good morning, my love." Those were the very last words I ever heard him speak. In the time that followed, Angela had been around more, or at least that's what I had thought. She would pop in 3 times a week without fail. She offered assistance with all the funeral arrangements and even tagged along on my grocery runs. She even went as far as to suggest I schedule a general checkup with my doctor. "Mom, you have to start taking better care of yourself now that you're on your own," she'd say with that smile I had always mistaken for genuine love. Now I saw it for what it truly was, an act of convenience. The beach house held a special place in our hearts. It had been our little sanctuary for years. Robert and I scraped together every penny we could to buy it when Angela turned 15. Every summer, without exception, we packed our bags and made our way down there, creating cherished memories, celebrating birthdays, and gathering for Christmas. Angela would bring her boyfriends and later on her husband, Edward. I was always in the kitchen cooking, cleaning, and making sure everyone had fresh laundry. It was just our family tradition. I never even considered she might view it as just a means to an end, a pile of money waiting to be snatched up. And then there was the car, Robert's beloved old Ford pickup. He cherished that truck like it was another child. He'd meticulously wash it every Sunday, religiously change the oil, and always make sure to park it in the very same spot, under the cool shade of that big oak tree. Angela knew exactly how much that truck meant to me. It was the last tangible connection I had to Robert. I could still catch a faint whiff of his familiar scent lingering on the seats. After she hung up, I just sat there, on that terribly uncomfortable green plastic chair, surrounded by a room full of sick people. And for the first time in months, the tears didn't come. Instead, a strange sense of calm washed over me, something I hadn't felt since the day Robert died. That was when I remembered something I had completely pushed to the back of my mind. 3 days before he passed, Robert had given me a manila envelope. "Antonia," he said, "put this away in your dresser drawer. If something happens to me, wait a while before you open it. Only open it when you feel ready." I had tucked it away without giving it a second thought. After the funeral, consumed by grief and caught up in all the arrangements, I simply forgot all about it. But now here it was patiently waiting for me back at home. The nurse called my name, signaling that it was time for my appointment. The doctor did his routine examination, told me I was in surprisingly good health for my age, and advised me to get more rest and pay closer attention to my diet. I nodded politely and offered a weak smile, but my thoughts were elsewhere. I couldn't stop thinking about that envelope, about the chilling tone in Angela's voice, and about Edward, who was most likely the mastermind behind this entire scheme. He had never been fond of me, always treating me like an unwelcome guest. I left the office and slowly made my way to the bus stop. Apparently, thanks to Angela, I no longer had a car. As I stood there waiting, a faint smile tugged at the corners of my mouth. There was a certain poetic justice to all of this, a strange sense of fate. My daughter truly thought she had left me with nothing, but what she didn't realize was that Robert, my ever-thoughtful Robert, had always been a planner, a man who anticipated every possibility. The bus arrived and I took a seat by the window. I watched as the city passed by in a blur, the houses, the shops, the people hurrying from one place to another, each carrying their own burdens, their own secrets. I had my own secret now, and I was on the verge of uncovering it. As soon as I got home, I headed straight for my bedroom. I opened the top drawer of my dresser, and there it was, the manila envelope, exactly where I had left it. My hands trembled slightly as I picked it up. I could feel that it contained several documents. Robert had written my name on the front in his familiar, neat handwriting. I sat down on the edge of the bed we had shared for so many years and took a deep, steadying breath. Dusk was settling in, and the house was slowly filling with those familiar shadows that no longer held any fear for me. I carefully opened the envelope, almost as if I were unwrapping a precious birthday gift. The contents inside were about to change the course of everything. The sight of what lay inside the envelope took my breath away. There were legal documents, property deeds, bank certificates, and a handwritten letter from Robert. My eyes welled up with tears as I recognized his familiar script. "My dearest Antonia," the letter began. "If you are reading this, it means I am no longer with you. Please forgive me for not sharing everything with you while I was alive, but I only wanted to spare you any unnecessary worries. Over the years, I quietly invested our savings in various properties and businesses. The beach house is just the tip of the iceberg. We actually own 6 other properties, including the apartment building where Angela and Edward currently reside. We also hold shares in 3 companies which, believe it or not, are worth more than you can possibly imagine. You are a wealthy woman, my love. You always have been, but now you have the paperwork to prove it." My hands shook uncontrollably as I sifted through the documents. There were deeds to houses in different neighborhoods throughout the city, a fancy downtown condo, a quaint little motel down the coast, and indeed the 20-story apartment building where my daughter lived. Robert had been the silent owner of that building for the past 10 years, but he had cleverly placed everything under the name of a company I had never even heard of. According to the legal papers, I was now the sole heir to that company. There were also bank statements for accounts I didn't even know existed, with balances that seemed almost surreal. Robert had dedicated 40 years of his life to driving a bus, but it turned out he was also an incredibly savvy investor. Every single penny we managed to save, every sacrifice we made together, he had quietly multiplied, and I had absolutely no idea. In his letter, Robert explained that he had kept all of this a secret because he never wanted me to fret about money or for Angela to ever find out about our true financial standing. "You know how our daughter is, Antonia," he wrote. "If she ever suspected we had this much money, her entire attitude would change. I want her to love us for who we are, not for what we possess." The irony was almost too much to bear. Our own daughter had abandoned us, convinced we had nothing, when in reality we had everything. I couldn't sleep a wink that night. I found myself wandering aimlessly through the house, running my hands over the familiar old furniture, and all the little knickknacks that Angela had always criticized for being outdated and tacky. I paused to study the family photos hanging on the wall, particularly the one of Angela when she was just 5 years old, happily perched on Robert's lap, her face lit up with laughter. Where had that sweet, innocent little girl gone? When exactly had she become so cold, so calculating? The next morning, the phone rang before the sun had even fully risen. It was Angela again. Her voice sounded different this time, softer, almost sickly sweet. But I had learned my lesson and knew better than to trust those artificial shifts in tone. "Mom, how are you doing? I just wanted to let you know that we've already transferred the money from the sale of the house and the car. We deposited your portion into your account. It's not a huge amount, but it should help you get by for a few months while you search for something smaller." "My portion?" I asked, managing to keep my voice even. "Yeah, Mom. Obviously, we weren't just going to leave you with nothing. We gave you 30%. That seems fair, right? We really need the money for our investment in Europe. Edward has stumbled upon an incredible business opportunity over there. 30% of what was rightfully mine. How incredibly generous of them." "I see. So when are you leaving, honey?" "This afternoon. Our bags are already packed and ready to go. We'll be gone for at least 6 months, possibly even longer if the business takes off. But don't worry, Mom. When we get back, we promise to help you find a nice little apartment. Something that perfectly suits your needs." Suits my needs. As if she had the slightest clue what my needs even were anymore. "All right, Angela. Have a safe trip." "Oh, Mom, I knew you would understand. You've always been so wonderfully compassionate. We love you so much." And with that she hung up. I stood there in the kitchen, clutching the phone in my hand, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I burst out laughing. It was a deep, hearty laugh, the kind I hadn't experienced since Robert's passing. The whole situation was just so utterly absurd, almost comical. My own daughter had robbed me blind, essentially kicked me out of my own home, and spoken to me with such patronizing condescension, all in order to finance some harebrained European escapade that was probably doomed to fail from the start. But what truly bothered me wasn't the money itself. It was the utter ease with which she had discarded me, as if I were nothing more than an old, unwanted possession. 45 years of my life dedicated to her, filled with sacrifice and unconditional love, and she had erased me from her life with a measly 2-minute phone call. That was the part that stung the most. I logged into my bank account online. Sure enough, they had deposited a sum of money that probably seemed incredibly generous in their eyes, but to me it was nothing short of a mockery. They had sold the beach house for significantly less than its actual worth, most likely because they were desperate to get their hands on the cash as quickly as possible, and they had practically given away Robert's beloved truck for a mere pittance. Later that afternoon, I watched from my living room window as Angela and Edward loaded their expensive-looking suitcases into a taxi. He was struggling with 2 enormous suitcases, while she toted a ridiculously expensive designer carry-on bag. I watched them laugh, exchange a quick kiss, and excitedly discuss their travel plans. They looked like a pair of giddy teenagers embarking on some grand adventure. Neither of them even glanced up at my window, not even a simple wave goodbye. Once the taxi had disappeared down the street, I settled into my usual spot in the kitchen with a cup of tea and spread Robert's documents across the table. I knew I had some serious decisions to make. I could pick up the phone, call a lawyer, and immediately begin the process of reclaiming my properties, taking back everything they had so brazenly stolen. But something deep inside me told me there was a much better way to handle this, a more meaningful, even educational approach. I reached for the phone and dialed Mr. Peterson, the attorney who had handled Robert's legal affairs for years. He had attended the funeral, offered his sincerest condolences, and told me to call him anytime if I ever needed anything at all. Well, that time had finally come. "Mrs. Brooks, it's good to hear from you. How are you holding up?" "I'm doing as well as can be expected, Mr. Peterson. I'm calling because I desperately need to schedule a meeting with you as soon as possible. I've recently discovered some documents from Robert that I simply don't understand." "Of course, Mrs. Brooks. You're welcome to come by my office tomorrow morning. I'll be here waiting for you." That night, for the first time in months, I experienced a full uninterrupted night's sleep. I dreamed of Robert. He was sitting in his usual spot, his favorite armchair, engrossed in the morning newspaper, just like every other morning we had spent together. When he looked up and saw me standing there, he smiled that familiar, comforting smile and said, "It's about time, my love. It's about time you stood up for yourself and showed them what you're made of." I woke up with a strange feeling swirling inside me. It wasn't exactly happiness, but it wasn't the crushing sadness that had been my constant companion for the past several months. It was something more akin to quiet determination, a renewed sense of purpose. For the first time since Robert's death, I had a clear plan of action. I was going to get back what was rightfully mine, but not in the way Angela expected, not with a messy legal battle that would only cause more pain and heartache. The next morning I took extra care in choosing my outfit. I selected my favorite wine-colored dress, the one Robert always told me made me look incredibly elegant. I carefully styled my hair and applied a touch of makeup, something I hadn't bothered with in months. As I gazed at my reflection in the mirror, I saw a woman I hadn't seen in a very long time. I saw a strong, confident woman, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. Mr. Peterson's office was located in the heart of downtown. The building itself was old, but undeniably elegant, boasting gleaming marble floors and expansive windows that offered breathtaking views of the city. He greeted me with his usual warm smile, but as soon as I handed him Robert's documents, his entire demeanor changed. "Mrs. Brooks," he stammered, This is far more extensive than I ever could have imagined." Robert was an incredibly shrewd man. According to, she didn't have the keys. She was forced to ask the building superintendent to let her in using the emergency copy. Interesting. Edward possessing the keys likely meant he decided not to return. Alternatively, Angela may have discovered something about him and left in haste. Regardless, my daughter was back, and she would soon receive my little welcoming present. Mr. Peterson phoned me that very afternoon. "Mrs. Brooks, the letter was delivered an hour ago. The doorman verified that your daughter received it personally." "Perfect. How long did we give her?" 30 days to vacate the apartment, in accordance with legal standards." "But Mrs. Brooks, are you certain you want to do this? She is your daughter after all." "Mr. Peterson, my daughter evicted me from my own home with a 2-minute phone call. She sold my belongings without consulting me. She treated me like trash. Now, she's about to learn that actions have consequences." "I understand. I simply wanted to ensure you had considered all the ramifications." "I have considered them, Mr. Peterson. Every single one." That night I found sleep elusive. I lay awake, visualizing Angela's face as she read the letter. The initial bewilderment followed by disbelief and then panic. She'd probably assume it was a mistake, a scam. But upon calling to confirm, she would learn everything was perfectly legal. The following day, as if she had been anticipating my call, the phone rang at 8 a.m. It was Angela, her voice laced with desperation. Mom, I need to talk to you right away. Good morning, honey. How was Europe? Mom, I don't have time for that right now. I got a very strange letter yesterday. It says I have to leave my apartment in 30 days. There has to be a mistake, right? Do you know anything about this? An eviction notice. How peculiar. Who sent it? From some company I've never even heard of. Just a sec, let me grab the letter. Robert Investments Incorporated. Does that name ring a bell? Robert had used his own first name for the company. How ironic. No, honey. That name is new to me. Are you positive the letter is genuine? That's what I'm trying to find out. Mom, I really need your help. I don't know what to do. Edward dumped me in Europe. He ran off with another woman and now I come back to this mess. I don't get what's going on. There it was, confirmation. Edward had ditched her. Most likely when the money ran out, or when he realized the legal problems back home were more serious than he'd initially thought. Poor Angela. She had sacrificed her family for a good-for-nothing man. I'm so sorry, honey. Where are you right now? I'm at the apartment, but I don't know for how much longer. Mom, can I come over? I need to talk to someone. I have nobody else. The irony was exquisite. Now that she was abandoned by the man for whom she'd abandoned me, she suddenly remembered she had a mother. Of course, honey. Come over whenever you want. I'm on my way. I hung up the phone and examined my reflection in the mirror. I had to be perfect for this performance. I selected my most conservative gray dress, secured my hair in a simple bun, and practiced my expression of a concerned but resigned mother. When Angela arrived, she would see precisely what she expected. A poor, vulnerable widow who had been abandoned by her own daughter. Angela arrived an hour later. When I opened the door, I was shocked at how awful she looked. She'd lost weight, had dark circles under her eyes, and her expensive clothes looked wrinkled and disheveled. Her eyes were bloodshot from crying. Mom, she said. For a moment I thought she might hug me, but she stopped herself as if she suddenly remembered how things had ended between us. Come in, honey. Want some coffee? Yes, please. We sat in the kitchen, at the same table where I had reviewed Robert's documents weeks earlier. Angela looked small in that chair, lost, just as she had when she was a child and came to me with her school problems. Mom, I'm so sorry for the way I left things. I know I didn't treat you right. It's water under the bridge, honey. No, it's not. I was awful to you. I said terrible things and now her voice cracked. Now I have nobody. What happened with Edward? He took off with a 25-year-old waitress from a hotel in Paris. Turns out there was never any business in Europe. It was all a lie. He just wanted to run away from the debts he had here, and used the money from selling your house to fund his adventure. All those debts? Yes, Mom. So many debts. Apparently, he had been taking out loans for years, using the apartment we lived in as collateral. But now I find out he wasn't even the owner of the apartment. How is that even possible? This was my moment. I don't know, honey. Property laws can be very complicated. The thing is, the banks are now coming after me for his debts. They're saying that since we were married, I'm also responsible. And to top it off, this eviction notice. Mom, I don't know what to do. I have no money. I have no job. I have nowhere to live. She began to cry. Real tears of genuine desperation. And for a fleeting moment, my mother's heart softened. I wanted to embrace her, comfort her, assure her that everything would be all right. But then, I remembered the coldness in her voice when she'd called me from the doctor's office. The ease with which she had discarded me. The way she had spoken to me as if I were a burden. Have you spoken to a lawyer about this notice? I can't afford a lawyer, Mom. We blew all our money in Europe. Edward took what little was left when he ran off with that woman. So what are your plans? I was thinking maybe I could stay here with you for a little while. Just until I can find a job in a small apartment. There it was, the question I had been waiting for. After kicking me out of my own house, after selling my possessions, after treating me like garbage, she now wanted me to rescue her. She wanted the poor widow she had created to save her from the consequences of her own choices. Of course, honey, this will always be your home. Angela looked at me surprised, as if she hadn't anticipated it being so simple. Really, Mom? After everything that's happened? You're my daughter, Angela. That will never change. She stood up and this time she did hug me. It was a desperate hug, from someone drowning and grasping at the only thing within reach. I hugged her back, but not with the unconditional love from before. Now there was calculation in my embrace. Strategy. Thank you, Mom. I promise I'll find a job really soon. I won't be a burden. Don't worry about that now. Rest, recover, and then we'll figure out what your options are. Angela left that afternoon to collect a few things from her apartment. I remained in the kitchen, contemplating how effortlessly everything had fallen into place. She had come to me precisely as I had envisioned. Broken, desperate, with no other options, and best of all, completely unaware. In her eyes, I was still the poor, abandoned mother who needed her compassion. But this was only the first stage of my plan. Having her living with me would provide the perfect opportunity for the next phase. I was going to let her settle in, feel secure, and believe she had found refuge in my home. And then, when she least expected it, I was going to teach her the difference between being poor by choice and being poor by consequence. That night, I called Mr. Peterson. Mr. Peterson, I need you to do something else for me. Tell me, Mrs. Brooks. I want you to investigate Edward's debts. I need to know exactly how much he owes to whom, and what legal options I have to shield them from my daughter. That will require some time, but it's definitely doable. Perfect. And Mr. Peterson, I need this to be kept completely confidential. No one can know that I'm behind this investigation. Of course, Mrs. Brooks. May I ask what your ultimate goal is? My goal, Mr. Peterson, is quite simple. I intend to save my daughter, but first she has to understand what it truly means to hit rock bottom. After I hung up, I poured myself a glass of the wine that Robert had been saving for special occasions. It had been a long time since I'd had a special occasion like this one. The game was now underway, and for the first time in months, I held all the winning cards. Angela moved into my house the next day. She arrived with just 2 suitcases and a cardboard box, all that remained of her previous life. I watched her unpack in her old bedroom, the very one she had slept in throughout her teenage years, and I could see the humiliation etched in every movement she made. She had gone from living in a luxury condo to seeking refuge in her childhood bedroom. Mom, I found this in the apartment, she said, holding up a manila envelope. It was mixed in with Edward's things. It has your name on it. It was another one of Robert's envelopes. My heart skipped a beat, but I managed to maintain my composure. My name? How strange. Yes, look. She showed me the envelope. Indeed, it had my name written on it in Robert's handwriting, but this envelope was different from the one I'd found in my dresser. This one was smaller, newer. Maybe Edward found it among Dad's things after he passed away, and simply forgot to give it to you. That's possible. Can I take a look? I opened the envelope in her presence. Inside was a brief letter and a small key. The letter read, Antonia, if you are reading this after having received the main envelope, it means our daughter is going through a difficult time. This key opens a safety deposit box at the Central Bank downtown branch. The number is 247. There is something there that can help you help her, but use it wisely. With eternal love, Robert. Angela read the letter over my shoulder. A safety deposit box? Dad had a safety deposit box. I had no idea. Me neither. I lied. Your father never mentioned this to me. Do you think we should go see what's inside? I'm not sure, honey. Maybe it's best to leave it alone. But Mom, there might be something important in there. Documents, or I don't know, maybe something valuable that could help us. The desperation in her voice was palpable. Angela was grasping at any possibility of finding a way out of her current situation, and I was going to let her cling to it a little longer before I revealed the full truth. Okay, I said after a calculated pause. We can go tomorrow. That night, Angela and I had dinner together for the first time in months. She had cooked, trying to be helpful, but the food tasted of guilt and desperation. She shared more details about what had transpired in Europe, and each story was more horrific than the last. Edward lied about everything, Mom. Not just the business but the debts too. I thought he only owed a small amount of money, but it turns out he owes over $100,000. And the worst part is, he used my name for some of the loans without me even knowing. How could he do that? He forged my signature. When I married him, I gave him some documents so he could handle the banking for our joint account. I never imagined he would use them for something like this. Do you have any proof that you were unaware? I don't know. It's all so complicated. The banks claim that since we were married, I'm responsible for all of his debts anyway. What about the divorce? I don't even know where Edward is right now. He just vanished. His phone is disconnected. He doesn't respond to emails. Nothing. It's like he disappeared. Perfect. Edward had fled like the rat he had always been, leaving Angela to face the consequences of her actions alone. In a way, he had done me a favor. Now my daughter was experiencing precisely what I had felt when he had abandoned me. Betrayal by someone she had completely trusted. I'm so sorry, honey. I had no idea things were this bad. Neither did I, Mom. I really thought Edward loved me, that we were going to build a life together, but it turns out I was just an easy way for him to get money and documents. Angela began to cry again. How could I have been so gullible? How did I not realize who he really was? It was tempting to tell her that I had seen the red flags from the beginning, that I had tried to warn her that Edward had never seemed trustworthy, but that would have shattered my facade as a sympathetic and vulnerable mother. Love can be blinding sometimes, honey. Don't blame yourself too much. But Mom, I didn't just ruin my own life. I ruined yours too. I treated you terribly. I took your house, your truck, your belongings, all to give to a man who dumped me at the first opportunity. Now we're two poor women just trying to survive because of me. It's in the past, Angela. We'll get through this. No, it's not. Now we're both in trouble because of my mistakes. You lost everything Dad left you, and I lost my marriage and my future. We're two poor women just trying to survive. If she only knew, I thought that at that very moment, I possessed more money than she could possibly imagine, that I was the owner of the building where she lived, that I could resolve all her problems with a single phone call. But it wasn't time yet. The next day we went to the bank. Angela was anxious and hopeful. I maintained my performance as a bewildered widow who didn't grasp much about finance. The bank employee led us to the safety deposit boxes, verified my ID, and opened box number 247. Inside were jewels, a lot of jewels, rings, necklaces, bracelets, earrings. I recognized some pieces as heirlooms from Robert's family. Others were completely unfamiliar to me. There was also a letter explaining the origin of each piece and its approximate value. Angela gasped. Mom, this has to be worth a fortune. Do you really think so? Yes. Look at this emerald in this pearl necklace. Mom, Dad had stashed away a treasure here. According to Robert's letter, the jewels were worth roughly $200,000. It was a significant sum, but it was nothing compared to the rest of my assets. It was like discovering a few coins under the sofa when you have millions in the bank. What should we do with this, Mom? I don't know, honey. These are family memories. But Mom, we could sell some of the pieces. With the money you could buy your beach house back and I could pay off some of Edward's debts. There it was again. Even when she stumbled upon something valuable, Angela's initial reaction was to consider how to use it to solve the problems that Edward had created. She still hadn't learned her lesson. Are you certain that you want to use your father's inheritance to pay Edward's debts? What other option do I have, Mom? If I don't pay something soon, the banks are going to foreclose on everything I own. And technically, I don't even own anything. Everything was in Edward's name. Think carefully, honey. Once you sell these jewels, you won't be able to get them back. I know, but what else can I do? I can't even get a job with all these lawsuits pending. No employer is going to want to hire someone with so many legal problems. We took the jewels back to the house. Angela spread them out on the kitchen table and examined them one by one, calculating which ones she could sell and which ones she should keep. It was painful to watch her reduce decades of family history to numbers on a spreadsheet. "Mom, I think I can get about $180,000 for the jewels," she said one afternoon, counting the bills on the kitchen table. "It's less than I expected, but it's enough to take care of the most urgent debts. Are you positive you want to do this? I don't have a choice. If I don't pay something soon, they're going to seize everything. Even this house could be at risk if they can somehow prove I have some legal connection to the properties." How ironic the situation was. Angela was worried about losing a house that I owned, paying the debts of a man who had abandoned her with money from jewels that had belonged to the same man who had created the fortune that could save her. And how are you going to decide which debts to pay off first? I spoke with a free financial advisor at the bank. She told me to prioritize the debts that have actual collateral because those are the ones that could affect property or lead to immediate foreclosure. Angela had matured a lot in these past few weeks. The woman who had sold my things without asking me was now carefully scrutinizing every financial decision. The suffering had made her more responsible, but also more vulnerable. That night, as she was organizing the debt documents on the table, I received a phone call from Mr. Peterson. "Mrs. Brooks, I have a comprehensive report on Edward's debts. The situation is actually worse than I initially thought." "How much worse?" "He owes over $200,000 to various banks and also has debts with private lenders. What's more concerning is that he used forged documents with your daughter's signature for some of these loans. That means Angela is legally responsible. It's tricky. If we can prove that she was unaware, we may be able to get her out of some of the debts, but it's going to be a long and expensive process." How expensive would a competent lawyer who specializes in these types of cases be? Probably around $50,000, and there's no guarantee of success. I understand. And what if she just pays off the debts? If she has the money, that would be the quickest solution, but I doubt she has access to that kind of money. "Mr. Peterson, I want you to prepare all the necessary documents to get my daughter out of these debts, but don't say anything to her yet. You're going to represent Mrs. Brooks. I intend to do whatever it takes to protect my daughter, but this needs to be handled in a very specific way." As I hung up the phone, I found Angela in the living room, staring at the jewels with a somber expression. She looked lost, like a child who had broken her favorite toy and didn't know how to fix it. "What are you thinking about, honey?" "About Dad. About how disappointed he would be in me if he could see what I've done with my life." "Your father loved you very much, Angela. He would understand." "No, Mom. He taught me to be responsible, to value family, and not to be selfish. And I did the exact opposite. I abandoned my mother for a man who turned out to be a liar. I sold my family's memories for money. I ruined everything he built." For the first time since her return, I heard genuine regret in her voice. It wasn't just lamenting the consequences of her actions, but a sincere acknowledgement that she had done something morally wrong. "People make mistakes, honey. The important thing is to learn from them." "But how do I learn from this, Mom? How do I repair the damage I've caused?" There it was, the question I had been waiting for. Angela was finally ready to confront the truth about her actions and their consequences. But it wasn't yet time to reveal my final card. First, I had to let her hit rock bottom completely. The next few days were critical to my plan. Angela decided to sell the majority of the jewels, only keeping the engagement ring that Robert had given me and a small necklace that had belonged to her grandmother. I observed her as she prepared to visit jewelry stores, researched prices, and negotiated with buyers. It was painful to watch her reduce decades of family history to commercial transactions, but it was necessary for her to grasp the true weight of her decisions. "Mom, I got $180,000 for the jewels," she told me one afternoon, counting the bills on the kitchen table. "It's less than I'd hoped for, but it's enough to pay off the most pressing debts. Are you certain you want to proceed? I don't have a choice. If I don't make some payments soon, they'll foreclose on everything. Even this house could be at risk if they somehow prove I have some legal connection to the properties." How ironic the situation was. Angela was worried about losing a house that I owned, paying the debts of a man who had abandoned her with money from jewels that had belonged to the same man who had created the fortune that could save her. And how will you decide which debts to prioritize? I consulted with a free financial advisor at the bank. She recommended prioritizing debts with actual collateral, as those are the ones that could affect property or lead to immediate foreclosure. Angela had grown up significantly in the past few weeks. The woman who had sold my possessions without consulting me was now carefully analyzing every financial decision. The suffering had made her more responsible, but also more fragile. That night, while she was arranging the debt documents on the table, I received a call from Mr. Peterson. "Mrs. Brooks, I have important information. We managed to locate Edward." "Where is he?" "In Paris, just as your daughter suspected. But here's the interesting part. He's trying to obtain French residency through a sham marriage with that young woman your daughter mentioned." "Sham marriage?" "Yes. Apparently, the girl needs documentation, and he needs a way to remain in Europe without being deported. But most importantly, we discovered evidence that he deliberately falsified your daughter's documents with the intention of fleeing the country. That means Angela can avoid the debts. With this evidence, yes, we can prove fraud and coercion. Your daughter won't be held responsible for what Edward did behind her back." It was perfect. I had a way to rescue Angela from all her debts legally, without her suspecting that I had the resources to do so. "Mr. Peterson, I want you to initiate the legal process immediately. Don't tell my daughter anything yet. I want the process to be completely finalized before I inform her. I don't want to give her any false hope." "Understood. This will take approximately 3 weeks, maybe a month." "Perfect." When I hung up, Angela looked at me with curiosity. "Who was that, Mom?" "Oh, it was a woman asking for Mrs. Davis, our neighbor down the street. They dialed the wrong number." Lying had become effortless. With each passing day, I felt more at ease with this double life I was leading. On one hand, I was the poor, abandoned mother that Angela believed me to be. On the other, I was a wealthy. Here's the rewritten version of the text, translated and expanded upon in American English, aiming for a natural and emotionally resonant style. She was a woman, so quietly and deliberately guiding my daughter toward salvation and a real education. Over those next couple of weeks, I watched Angela wrestle with choices she'd never before had to make. Things like figuring out how to stretch $1 for groceries, how to deal with bill collectors when you're broke, and how to even begin looking for a job when your credit is in tatters. It was harsh, sure, but it was the lesson she desperately needed. "Mom, I had 3 job interviews today," she told me one evening, dragging herself home with swollen feet and a weary look on her face. 2 of them turned me down flat because of the legal mess. The third offered me a part-time gig cleaning offices at night. "Are you going to take it?" I asked. "I don't have a choice, Mom. The pay is terrible, but it's something, and at least it's at night so I can keep looking for something better during the day." Seeing my daughter, someone who'd known nothing but comfort for over 40 years, getting ready to scrub toilets and empty trash cans at night, it just about broke me. But, I had to admit, it also filled me with a strange kind of pride. She was finally facing reality head-on, without waiting for someone else to ride in and fix things for her. "Are you sure you can handle all that physical work?" I asked. "I'll have to learn, Mom. I can't keep sponging off of you. It's bad enough you're letting me stay here for free. This is your home, Angela." "No, Mom, it's your home. And I'm here because you're generous enough to let me. But I'm not going to take advantage of that forever." One night, while Angela was out on her very first cleaning shift, Aurora came by for a visit. She sat with me in the kitchen, sipping tea and gazing at the family photos hanging on the walls. "Antonia, I have to ask you something," she began. "Did you have any idea Angela would come crawling back like this?" "What do you mean?" "Well, when she took off, she seemed so sure of herself, so cocky. She went on and on about the amazing life she was going to have in Europe, about how successful Edward was. And now she's back, completely humbled, working some dead-end cleaning job, living here with you again. Life throws you curveballs, Aurora." "Yeah, but there's more to it than that. I've been watching Angela these past few days and she's different. Not just sad, but humble, like she's learned a hard lesson. Aurora had always been good at reading people. What do you think she learned? I asked. I think she learned to appreciate all the things she used to take for granted. Like having a mother who loves her no matter what. Maybe. Antonia, can I be honest? When Angela left and treated you so badly, a lot of us thought you'd never forgive her. But here you are, taking care of her. Giving her a place to live when she's got nowhere else to go. She's my daughter, Aurora. Sure, but not every mother would do what you're doing, especially after the way she treated you. If Aurora only knew the whole story, that I had the power to make all of Angela's problems disappear with a snap of my fingers, but was choosing to let her struggle a little longer so she could really learn something. Do you think I'm doing the right thing? I asked. I think you're doing what any good mother would do. But I also think Angela needs to fully understand what she threw away when she turned her back on you. What do you mean? I mean, she needs to value you for more than just being the mom who bails her out when she screws up. She needs to see you as the strong woman who built a good life for herself for 45 years. She needs to respect you, not just need you. Aurora had nailed it. That was exactly what I was hoping for. I didn't want Angela coming back to me out of desperation. I wanted her to come back out of genuine respect and love. And how do you think that's going to happen? I asked. I think it's already happening. I've seen her these past few days, Antonia. The way she talks to you now is totally different. She's not the spoiled daughter who bosses you around or acts like you're a burden. She's a grown woman who's truly grateful to have you as her mother. That night, when Angela got back from work, I saw she was tired, but there was a new sense of pride about her. She had earned those few dollars with her own sweat, and that meant something. How was your first day? I asked. Hard, but not as awful as I thought it would be. The other women who worked there were really helpful. One of them, Mrs. Johnson, showed me some tricks to clean faster. Mrs. Johnson? Yeah. She's 60 years old and has been cleaning offices for 20 years. She told me she started after her husband left her with 3 little kids. She says it's not her dream job, but it gave her independence and dignity. She sounds like a smart woman. She is. She said something that really got me thinking. She told me there are 2 kinds of people who end up doing this kind of work. The ones who never had any opportunities, and the ones who messed up the opportunities they did have. Then she asked me which one I was. And what did you tell her? I told her the truth. That I had every advantage in the world. A family that loved me, a stable home and inheritance, and that I threw it all away for a jerk. What did she say? She laughed and said, Well, honey, at least you know exactly why you're here. That puts you one step ahead of most people. Angela poured herself a glass of water and sat down with me at the table. Mom, I want you to know something. These past few weeks have been the hardest of my life, but also the most important. Why? Because I finally understand what really matters. It's not money. It's not living in some fancy apartment. It's not impressing people. It's having people who genuinely love you, who are there for you when your world falls apart. Angela, honey. Let me finish, Mom. You have every right to hate me for what I did. I abandoned you when you needed me most. I took all the money Dad left you. I treated you like you were nothing but a nuisance. And now I'm back, expecting you to forgive me and take care of me. I already forgave you, honey. But I haven't forgiven myself, and I won't until I prove that I've really changed, that I've learned from my mistakes. Mr. Peterson called the next morning. Mrs. Brooks, I have some excellent news. The legal proceedings are almost finished. We can get your daughter out from under all of Edward's debts. It was time. After watching Angela struggle, work her tail off and really think about her mistakes for weeks, the moment had finally arrived to show her that she'd never been alone, that someone had always been quietly looking out for her. Mr. Peterson, I want you to set up a meeting. It's time for my daughter to know the whole truth. Mr. Peterson arranged the meeting for Friday morning at his office. I told Angela I'd made an appointment with a lawyer who might be able to help her with her legal troubles, but I didn't go into detail. She agreed to come, even though she was clearly worried about how much it would cost. Mom, I don't have any money to pay a lawyer. I barely have enough to cover the basics. Don't worry about that now, honey. Let's just hear what he has to say. We arrived at Mr. Peterson's office right on time. Angela had put on her best clothes, which were now a little loose on her. She was a bundle of nerves, twisting her hands together, bracing herself for the next piece of bad news on her seemingly endless list of problems. Mr. Peterson greeted us with his usual professional smile. Mrs. Brooks, Miss Brooks, thank you for coming. Thank you for seeing us, Angela replied. Although I should warn you, my financial situation is a mess, and I probably can't afford your fees. That's exactly what we're going to discuss, Mr. Peterson said, giving me a quick glance. But first, I need you to look over these documents. Mr. Peterson handed Angela a thick folder. She opened it and started reading, her expression shifting from confusion to total surprise. I don't understand. These papers say that Edward forged my signature, that there's evidence of fraud, that I'm not responsible for these debts. That's right. We've been investigating your case for the past few weeks. We found enough evidence to prove you were a victim of identity theft. But how is that possible? Who paid for this investigation? I sure didn't. Mr. Peterson looked at me. It was my cue. Angela, there's something I need to tell you. What is it, Mom? I took a deep breath. After weeks of playing a part, I was finally going to reveal the truth. Your father left me more than you ever knew. A lot more. What do you mean? She looked at Mr. Peterson, bewildered. Show her the other documents, I instructed. Mr. Peterson pulled out a second folder and handed it to Angela. This time the documents were property deeds, bank statements, investment certificates, the whole fortune Robert had secretly built up over the years. Angela read in silence for what felt like forever. Her face went through a whole roller coaster of emotions. Confusion, disbelief, shock, and finally dawning comprehension. Mom, this says you own the building where I used to live. Yes. And that you have other properties, bank accounts, investments. Yes. This means when I sold the beach house, it was really my house and the sale was a scam? And you already got it back? I nodded. Angela just stared at the papers, trying to wrap her head around it all. How long have you known about this? Since the day you called me from the doctor's office. You knew all this when I came back from Europe begging for help? Yes. You knew you could fix all my problems when you saw me crying myself to sleep every night? Yes. There was a long, heavy silence. Angela closed the folders and looked straight at me. Why, Mom? Why did you let me suffer like that when you could have helped me? This was the question I'd been waiting for. Because you needed to learn something you couldn't learn any other way. What? You needed to learn the value of the things you'd lost. The value of family, of respect, of responsibility. When you turned your back on me, it wasn't just money you took. It was dignity. It was love. It was trust. Angela started to cry. But these weren't the self-pitying tears she'd been shedding for weeks. These were tears of real understanding. I abandoned you when you needed me most. Yes. I treated you like dirt. Yes. And you saved me anyway. Yes, but not in the way you expected. I didn't save you by handing you money so you could keep making the same mistakes. I saved you by letting you hit rock bottom so you could learn to save yourself. Mr. Peterson discreetly cleared his throat. Miss Brooks, your mother has taken care of all the legal fees to clear you of Edward's debts. She's also recovered all the properties that were fraudulently sold. You're completely free of any legal trouble. And the cleaning job I got. You can quit if you want, I said. But I hope you don't. Why? Because that job is teaching you something you never learned when things were easy. It's teaching you the value of your own effort, the dignity of honest work, the importance of every single dollar you earn. Angela wiped her eyes and looked at me with an expression I hadn't seen in years. It wasn't the look of a daughter who needs her mother, but the look of a grown woman who respects another woman. Do you forgive me, Mom? I forgave you a long time ago, honey. The question is, can you forgive yourself? I don't know if I can. I did some pretty awful things. People make mistakes, Angela. The important thing is what we do after we realize we've made them. Mr. Peterson left us alone in his office for a few minutes. Angela and I sat there in silence, just letting everything sink in. Mom, I want you to know something. Even if you didn't have all this money, even if you really were the poor widow I thought you were, I would have learned the same lesson. What lesson? That there's nothing more important than having someone who loves you unconditionally. These past few weeks, the only thing that kept me going was knowing I had a home with you. That no matter how badly I'd messed up my life, you were still my mother. That will never change, Angela. I know. But I also know that I can never take that love for granted again. I have to earn it every day with respect, with gratitude, with my actions, not just my words. We left Mr. Peterson's office with a completely new kind of relationship. We weren't just mother and daughter bonded by blood and habit anymore. We were two grown women who had chosen each other after surviving the toughest challenge imaginable. The next few weeks were all about rebuilding, but not in the way Angela expected. Even though she now knew I had enough money to solve all her problems, she decided to keep her night cleaning job. Mom, I need to finish what I started, she told me one afternoon as she was getting ready for work. I can't just go back to living a comfortable life like nothing happened. Are you sure? You don't have to punish yourself forever. It's not a punishment. It's a way of reminding myself of who I was, and who I want to be now. I watched her put on her work uniform, something that would have been unthinkable just a few months earlier, when she was living in that luxury condo with Edward. But there was something different about her posture, the way she carried herself. She wasn't the broken woman who'd shown up at my door crying anymore. She was someone who had found a sense of pride in honest work. Aurora came to visit me that afternoon, like she had been doing every few days since Angela came back. Antonia, there are some pretty wild rumors going around the neighborhood, she said. What kind of rumors? People are saying you're not as broke as we all thought. Someone saw Angela leaving some fancy lawyer's office downtown. And then they saw her paying off all her debts at the bank. That takes serious money. People talk, I said. Yeah, but they're also saying you got your beach house back, and that somehow you managed to make all of Angela's legal problems disappear. That doesn't come cheap, Antonia. Aurora knew me too well to be fooled for long. What do you want to know? I finally asked. I want to know if my friend of 40 years has been lying to me about her situation. I poured myself a cup of tea and sat down across from her. It was time to let someone else in on the secret. Robert left me more than anyone knew, Aurora. Much more. How much more? Enough so that Angela and I never have to worry about money again. Aurora was quiet for a moment, processing the information. And why did you pretend to be poor all these months? Because I needed Angela to learn something she couldn't learn any other way. I told her the whole story, Angela's cruel phone call, my plan for a little payback, the weeks of watching her hit rock bottom, and finally, the reveal at Mr. Peterson's office. Antonia, that's brilliant and terrible at the same time. Terrible? Yes, because you let your own daughter suffer when you could have helped her right away. But also brilliant because I get why you did it. You do? Yes. Angela needed to learn the value of what she threw away. If you had just given her money to fix her problems, she would have learned that there's always someone who will rescue her from the consequences of her bad choices. Exactly. But Antonia, didn't it hurt you to see her hurting? Every day. Every night I heard her crying. Every morning, I watched her drag herself out of bed to go to work, tired and defeated. But I knew that if I rescued her too soon, she wouldn't learn the full lesson. And do you think she learned it? Just look at her. Angela knows she has access to enough money to live comfortably, but she chose to keep her job. She knows she could move to a better place, but she decided to stay here with me. She knows she doesn't have to worry about the debts, but she's using her own savings to help other women in similar situations. She's helping other women? Yeah. She's become friends with the women she works with, and she's using some of the money she earned cleaning offices to help a coworker who's having trouble paying for her son's daycare. Aurora smiled. That's not the Angela who went to Europe. No, it isn't. This Angela understands that money is just a tool, not a goal. She understands that dignity comes from work and respect, not from fancy possessions. That night, when Angela got home from work, she found me reading in the living room. "Mom, I have to tell you something. Today, Mrs. Johnson asked me if I was the daughter of the rich lady from the north side of town. What did you tell her?" "I said yes, that you have enough money for me not to have to work." "And what did she say then?" "She asked me why I was still working. So I explained that it was because I needed to prove to myself that I could stand on my own 2 feet. "And what did she say to that?" "She laughed and said, 'Honey, that's the difference between being rich and acting rich. Your mom taught you how to be truly rich. Mrs. Johnson is a wise woman. She is. And she made me realize something important. It's not about how much money you have, but about how you use it and how you feel about it.'" Angela sat down next to me on the couch. "Mom, I want you to know I've made a decision. I'm going to keep living here with you, but not as a daughter who's moved back in with her parents." "What's the difference?" "The difference is that I'm going to pay my share of the bills. I'm going to help with the upkeep of the house, and I'm going to treat this relationship like a partnership between two independent women who love and respect each other." "Angela, you don't have to do that." "Yes, I do. Mom, I want our relationship to be different than it was before. Before, I was a daughter who took her mother's love and care for granted. Now I want to be a grown woman who cherishes and takes care of the most important relationship in her life." "And your job?" "I'm going to keep working, but not necessarily cleaning offices forever. I want to go back to school. I want to get the skills I need to do something more meaningful with my life. But I want to do it one step at a time, earning every chance I get." "Do you have any idea what you want to study?" "Yes, I want to study social work. These past few weeks have shown me how many people are struggling without anyone to lean on. I want to use the resources we have to help other women who are going through what I went through." It was perfect. Angela had not only learned to appreciate what she had, but she'd found a way to use her experiences to help others. "And what about Edward?" I asked. "Mr. Peterson told me he was arrested in France for marriage fraud. He's going to be deported soon, but honestly, Mom, I don't even care anymore. That part of my life is over." "You don't feel any anger?" "No. Edward did me a favor without even realizing it. If he hadn't betrayed me, I never would have hit rock bottom. And if I had never hit rock bottom, I never would have learned to truly value what I have." That night, for the first time in months, I went to bed feeling completely at peace. My plan had worked better than I could have hoped. Angela had not only learned the lessons she needed to learn, but she'd come out of it a stronger, smarter, and more compassionate person. Robert would have been so proud. 6 months later, our lives had settled into a new kind of rhythm that neither of us could have imagined before. Angela was finishing her social work courses with top grades, and I decided to use some of my resources to create a foundation to help women who had experienced domestic violence and financial hardship. "Mom, the letter from the university came," Angela said one morning, rushing into the kitchen with an envelope in her hand. "I got accepted into the master's program. I start next semester." "That's wonderful, honey. But Mom, I want you to know I'm going to pay for it myself with my own savings. I've been putting away money from my job with the city." She had really learned to live frugally and to appreciate every dollar she earned. "Are you sure? We can easily afford the tuition." "I know, but I need to do this on my own. It's part of who I am now." Aurora came to visit that afternoon, like she did every Friday. She'd become a close friend to both of us, watching our transformation with a mixture of awe and wonder. "Antonia, I have to confess something," she said, pouring herself a cup of tea. "At first I thought you were being terribly cruel to Angela. And what do you think now?" "Now I think you're the wisest mother I've ever known. Just look at your daughter. Really look at her." It was true. The Angela sitting in the living room, studying for her exams, was unrecognizable from the woman who had left for Europe months ago. This Angela had a quiet strength, a confidence that came from deep inside, not from material possessions. "Did you know I saw Angela at the grocery store yesterday? Buying groceries for a family she's helping through her job?" Aurora asked. Angela hadn't even told me. And when I asked her why she was using her own money instead of using funds from the agency, She said that some things just can't be measured with government money. That evening, Angela and I ate dinner out on the porch, a tradition we had started months before. It was our time to talk about our day, make plans for the future, and just enjoy each other's company. "Mom, I got a really weird letter today," she said as she cut her salad. "From who?" "From Edward." My muscles tightened. "Edward? He wrote to you? From where?" "From prison in France. Apparently, he got sentenced to 2 years for marriage fraud. In the letter, he says he regrets everything he did and wants to ask for my forgiveness." "And how does that make you feel?" "Honestly, I don't feel anything. No anger, no sadness, no urge for revenge. It's like that part of my life happened a million years ago, not just a few months ago." "Are you going to write him back?" "No. Not because I hate him, but because there's just nothing to say. That Angela who married him doesn't exist anymore. This Angela has nothing to say to him." I was truly impressed by the maturity I heard in her voice. The woman sitting right there across from me had clearly developed a real inner strength, the kind that comes from hitting absolute rock bottom and then picking yourself up all on your own. "Do you know what this whole experience has taught me, Mom?" she asked. "What's that, honey?" I replied. "That true love isn't about someone telling you only what you want to hear. True love is about someone teaching you what you need to learn, even when it stings. It's a tough lesson to learn, but a necessary one. Edward just told me what I wanted to hear. He made me feel incredibly special. He convinced me that I deserved some kind of luxury life without having to put in any effort. You've taught me that real wealth comes from hard work, respect for others, and building genuine relationships." That night, after Angela had gone up to her room to study, I sat out on the porch by myself, just looking up at the stars and thinking about Robert. I had made him a promise that I would take care of our daughter, and I finally felt like I had fulfilled that promise in the right way. I hadn't taken care of her by just throwing money at her when she needed it. I had taken care of her by teaching her how to take care of herself. I hadn't saved her by solving all of her problems for her. I had saved her by allowing her to learn how to solve them all on her own. The next day was Sunday, and we had planned to visit the beach house together for the first time since I had managed to get it back. Angela hadn't wanted to go before then, saying she needed some time to process everything that had happened. "Are you ready to go?" I asked her as we both got into the truck. "I think so," she responded. The trip was silent, but it was a comfortable silence. When we arrived, Angela just stood there in the truck for a minute, looking at the house where we had spent so many summers as a family. "It looks exactly the same," she said finally. "Some things don't change, but a lot of other things definitely do. I'm not the same person who sold this house." We went inside together. The house was clean and tidy, just exactly as Robert and I had kept it for all those years. Angela walked slowly through each room, touching the furniture and looking closely at all the family photos that were still hanging on the walls. "Mom, I want to apologize," she said. "You already apologized, honey," I said. "No, I want to apologize specifically for my actions related to this house. Not just for selling it, but for reducing all our family memories to some kind of commercial transaction. It's all forgiven," I assured her. "This house represents 40 years of family summers, of birthdays, and of Christmases. Dad built that porch out there with his own 2 hands. You planted that garden over there. I learned how to swim at that very beach. And I turned all of it into money to try and fund the escapades of a completely worthless man." She sat down on the sofa where Robert used to read on Sunday mornings. "Do you know what hurts me the most?" she asked. "What's that, sweetie?" I replied. "That when I sold it, I honestly didn't feel a single thing. It was just another piece of property. But now being here again, I can feel Dad in every single corner of this place. I can hear his laughter, smell his morning coffee brewing, see his reading glasses sitting right there on the table. He's here, Angela." "He has always been here," I said. "I know, Mom. And I also know that he is incredibly proud of how you handled all of this. We spent the whole day there at the house cooking together, cleaning up, and fixing small little details that needed attention. It felt like a ritual of reconnection, not just with the place itself, but also with all the values that place really represented to us. As the sun started to set, we sat out on the porch that Robert had built, looking out at the ocean. "Mom, I have a proposal for you," Angela said. "What is it?" I asked. "I want us to turn this house into a temporary shelter for women who are trying to leave situations of domestic violence, a safe place where they can stay while they rebuild their lives." It was truly the perfect proposal. Robert would have absolutely loved the idea that his beloved beach house would serve to help other families in need. "I think that's a really beautiful idea, honey," I said. "We can definitely use some of the foundation's resources to maintain it, and I can personally oversee the program through my job. Are you sure you want to turn our family sanctuary into that, Mom?" she asked. "The best sanctuaries are always the ones that are shared. Dad always used to say that a house isn't truly a home until it opens its doors to other people who need love and support." He was absolutely right about that. Robert had always been incredibly generous with our home, always inviting relatives, friends, and neighbors who needed a place to stay. We returned home that night with a brand new project and a completely renewed relationship. We were no longer just mother and daughter united by obligation or need. We were now two women who had consciously chosen to build a life together based on genuine love, mutual respect, and a common purpose. That night, before I drifted off to sleep, I spoke to Robert in silence. "We did it, my love. Our daughter finally understands what truly matters in life." And for the first time since his death, I felt like he actually answered me. "I always knew you would. You're both stronger than you think." Justice had arrived not as revenge or punishment, but as education and transformation. And in the end, we had both gained something far more valuable than money. We had gained an authentic relationship built on a solid foundation that no future crisis could ever destroy. Did you enjoy my story? And what city are you listening from? Let's connect in the comments. If you like the story, please consider supporting me by sending a super thanks, so I can continue to bring you more stories like this one. Thank you so much for your wonderful support. I'm looking forward to reading your comments on the story. On the screen you can see 2 new life stories that I highly recommend. There's so much more available on my channel. Don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next life story. With love and respect.